Estamos com Mike Schmitz da ESPN, ele que está aqui em Matosinhos para acompanhar este Campeonato da Europa de Sub-20. Mike, welcome, first of all. Is it your first time here in Portugal?
First time in Portugal. I wandered around Porto today, beautiful city, so it's been a lot of fun.
So you usually spend your summers all around Europe watching these young kids. What do you expect to see here in Matosinhos?
I came mostly to see Schmitz. Obviously, he's a guy we've been following for a couple of years now, and then some other names as well. You know, you have Vít Krejci, I think is a very interesting prospect from Czech Republic, friends from Belgium. There's a lot of players, but Schmitz is kind of the headliner here, so wanted to just see his progress and see him in a different setting other than the NCAA.
And you met him, I believe, 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, I believe it was 2017 Under-18 European Championships B Division in Tallinn, Estonia, and I was just impressed with his length and his physical attributes, and I remember speaking with him, and nobody knew about him, you know, maybe outside of Portugal, so it's been really cool to see his progression.
Since the first time you saw him until now, how do you describe and evaluate his development?
Huge. I mean, going into his freshman season even, I thought, okay, it's maybe going to take him a little bit of time, you know, to get stronger, and the speed of the game. You know, when I first saw him, he was completely skinny, a total rail. You know, he was still even learning how to run, it seemed. And now, you know, you look at how his body's filled out and his instincts, you know, offensively, defensively, it's like night and day. So from seeing him at such a young age, I feel, you know, proud of just his development and how quickly he's emerged as an NBA prospect.
So if you had to write a scouting report on him today, what would you point out as his strengths and his weaknesses?
I think his strengths, his length, obviously, you know, you can't teach that. You look at his physical measurables, 7 feet tall, over a 7'4" wingspan, standing reach is 9'3½". The measurables are actually very similar to Clint Capella, which I think is a good model for him looking forward. You know, his ability to block shots, I think that's the #1 quality that NBA teams are intrigued about him. His offensive rebounding, his hands, his touch, his finishing, I think those are all really positives. You know, areas where he can improve, I think his strength, particularly his lower body, you know, being able to play through contact and play with the consistent energy for long stretches. You know, there are times when he gets tired quickly, and so I think improving his lower body is going to help him with that. And then just being able to read and react quickly offensively, you know, still improving his ability to play quickly, you know, I think could be an area for him, and expanding his offensive game. But, you know, the length and the shot blocking, that's what stands out most to me.
Do you think his physical tools are what NBA teams are looking for today's game?
Exactly what they're looking for, especially in a center, a guy who can run the floor like that, who can play above the rim, who can catch, who can protect the rim. That's really what you're looking for. It's just about, you know, continuing to get stronger. But, you know, his profile is really what fits in today's game, I think.
He just finished his first season in the NCAA, and he went to Mountain West Conference, to Utah State. They were huge this year. They were champions when they were projected 9th in the beginning of the year. So, analyzing the impact of Schmitz and the success of his team, what do you have to say?
It was huge. You know, I didn't expect them to play such a strong season. I think they're extremely well coached. You know, they do a great job of moving the ball, sharing the ball, and then defensively they're scrappy. They're really tough, and I think Schmitz is a big part of that, just because, you know, on the perimeter you can gamble a little bit more if you know you have a guy like that, you know, backing you up at the center position. Again, he really protects the rim, he really rebounds, so I think that was huge for them, just having a guy like that, because if you look at him, he's a high major type of athlete, high major body, high major length. There aren't really many guys that size in the Mountain West Conference, so what he did, like I said earlier, I don't think anyone, you know, expected him to have such a big impact early on. I mean, most of the schools I told about him after I first saw him said, he's probably going to have to redshirt. It's probably going to take him some time. I don't know if he can help us right away. And then you see what he did. He gets an NBA Combine invite. I mean, it's pretty unprecedented, as you know, especially from, a country like Portugal. So.
As you said, he became eligible to the draft. He went to the combine, and then he took his name out. He withdrew. Do you think that was a good decision?
I do. I think it was important for him to see where he stands, against some of the other big men in the draft, some of the best big men in college basketball, and then look at it and say, okay, these are some areas I really need to improve, and I'm going to dedicate myself this summer. I'm going to dedicate myself next year, and I think he would have gotten drafted if he stayed in. I would be surprised if he didn't, but it's different to just get drafted and then go spend the entire season with the G League. It's different than doing that as opposed to coming back to school, being a first-round pick, having your NBA franchise really excited about you, and then coming in and being able to play right away. So I think he can really improve his stock by going back to school. I really do.
He comes back for a second season, so now that he knows what to expect, what do you expect from him?
I expect him to have a huge year. I think he's a guy who could compete for Conference Player of the Year. I really do, just because of his impact in a variety of ways. And I think out here, this is a huge opportunity for him to kind of be the man on this team and lift this under-20 team to the A division, which I know they've never done. So, I would expect him to come in and have the same defensive impact next year, be able to play more minutes, maybe a little less foul trouble, and take a jump offensively as well.
Being an expert and knowing the quality of next year's draft, mainly in the center position, where does Nehemiah stand? Do you think he could be projected for a draft for a first round maybe?
Yeah, I think he's right in that fringe. I think he's a guy that teams are going to look at the back end of the first round, and especially going into this season. I know there are a lot of teams that liked him last year, and then he struggled a little bit at the combine. So then I think showing that, regaining some of that momentum with his play out here, and then early in the season next year, playing some of those non-Mountain West teams, some more high major teams, could really solidify himself in that range. So it's a pretty open draft next year. There's no surefire number one candidate, and then it's deep. I think there are a handful of centers who project as first round picks, and centers aren't exactly what teams are looking for in today's NBA, right? It's more about guards and wings. So he's going to have to prove himself. There's no doubt about that. But like I said, with his length, teams are going to give him a long look. There's no question.
Can we talk NBA right now?
Sure.
I know you're from Arizona and you live in LA. Do you have an NBA team?
I grew up in Phoenix, so I grew up in the Steve Nash era and Amari Stoudemire.
My favorite player.
Steve Nash.
Yeah.
My favorite player as well. One of the most skilled of all time. So, I was very lucky to grow up watching him and Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion and Joe Johnson, Boris Diaw eventually. Those are really fun teams. So they kind of modernized the basketball that we see today. So
7 seconds or less.
7 seconds or less. Now it's 3 seconds or less with some of these teams. But it was a crazy offseason. I mean, I think we're going to see more parity in the NBA than we probably ever have.
Probably you don't want to talk about the Phoenix Suns, but we'll go there in just a moment. In the last few years, there's been a boom of international players in the NBA. And last season, we had 4 of the major 6 individual awards to international players. Yeah. MVP to a Greek guy, some might know, the Defensive Player of the Year for Rudy Gobert, Rookie of the Year for Doncic, and Siakam with the Most Improved. What does this mean to today's game? I know David Stern wanted to globalize the game. Yeah. What does this mean to today's game and today's NBA?
I think that the NBA game has really shifted more toward European basketball. It's not so much about having 2 traditional big men anymore. It's more about space, three-point shooting, sharing the ball, guys with high basketball IQ. And where do you look further for that than Europe? So I think the change in style has led to more European prospects. And then I think also the growth of African basketball has been really big. When you look at a guy like Joel Embiid or Pascal Siakam, on that continent, there's guys who look like Giannis walking the streets, And I help out with the Uganda national team as an assistant coach and have been able to spend some time over there. And I think that's going to continue to grow as well. So, The game has never been more global, and I think that's huge for all of us. I really do.
Talking about European talent, we're not as physical as the Americans. How do you explain the success Europeans are having in such a physical and tough league as the NBA?
I think that over here, oftentimes you grow up with a ball in your hands. You know, if you go to a place like Serbia or Croatia, like the Doncic, right? I mean, he's so special because he grew up playing since he was a little kid and was empowered to have the ball in his hands and make decisions and show his creativity. And I think that's a huge part of it, you know, just living and breathing basketball over here. It's obviously huge. You know, maybe you don't have the same one-on-one game or the physical abilities, but like I said, the skill is really everything now in the NBA, and you have a lot of that in Europe.
So do you think European players are more and more ready to make an impact as they get to the NBA?
Yeah, I think nowadays for sure, and being able to play in, you know, first division leagues, you know, like a Doncic, being able to play in the EuroLeague, be the best player really in the EuroLeague, that we've never seen that. You know, so I think this year it's going to be huge for internationals this next coming draft. You know, we have Deni Avdija, who's playing with Maccabi Tel Aviv, plays a little bit like Luka. You know, he's not exactly Luka, but we call him Luka Light. Has some similarities, and then Theo Maledon with Asvel. You know, he's going to be playing EuroLeague next year. So I think next year's draft has a chance to be, you know, one of the best international drafts we've seen maybe in the last 5 to 10 years.
What about the NCAA? What benefits can international players get from playing in Division I basketball?
I think you get used to the American style of play a little bit. You get used to the culture. You look at a guy like Lauri Markkanen. You know, I think Arizona was huge for him. He goes in the top 10, and now he's been an awesome NBA player. You know, he got stronger. He helped his body. I think there's more of an emphasis on strength and conditioning. You know, maximizing your athleticism, being preventative with your injuries, and just making sure that you're the best athlete you can be. So I do think that there's a huge benefit to playing in the NCAA from that regard, especially if you're maybe a middle tier type of prospect. If you're a Doncic or you're a Maledon, I get it. You stay in first division, you play your minutes, then you go straight to the NBA. But if you're a guy who can really improve his body and all those things I mentioned, you know, it doesn't hurt to go the NCAA route.
Okay. About the 2019 rookie class, everybody talks Zion, but I'd like to ask you, besides Zion, Ja Morant, R.J. Barrett, what kind of talent maybe was hidden, big steals that we should be paying attention?
Yeah, the one I really like is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a Canadian kid out of Virginia Tech, was drafted to the Pelicans 17th overall. I think he's a major steal, 6'6", long arms, can play point guard, can play shooting guard, defends multiple positions, he passes with either hand. He's really what you're looking for in today's game. And then one other name is Ty Jerome from the University of Virginia, 6'5", really tough, shoots it, kind of a European style of game, you know, plays pick and roll, doesn't have a great body, doesn't have highest level athleticism, but can really play. So while everyone talks about the Zions and these guys, I think it was a deeper draft than it got credit for.
You just said in the beginning that a lot more parity in the NBA now, no more big threes. This free agency is wild.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I think the Clippers is really where I'm looking, you know, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and a team that really overperformed last season. And I like that they didn't lose their identity adding those guys. They got two guys who defend just like they want to. They can play modern basketball with small. They can play big. So to me, that's the favorite right now, is the Los Angeles Clippers.
And with Beverly, what perimeter defense they're gonna have?
Yeah, incredible. With a guy like Patrick Beverly, you know, a guy like Kawhi who can guard all four positions, and then the energy of a Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams as a six-man type of guy. You know, they re-signed Zubac. They drafted the kid Kabengele, who's another steal. So they're deep, they're tough. I think they're the one to beat.
You think they're the favorites to win the title?
For me, yes. You know, you look at Giannis as well. You know, the Lakers, they're all going to be competing. But for me, it's the Clippers right now.
What about the 76ers, for example?
I love their size. You know, I think Al Horford is huge. He's really going to help alongside Embiid and then be able to play the backup five as well. Josh Richardson is probably one of the most underrated players in the NBA. So, you know, them and Milwaukee out of the East, I think, are the two favorites.
Okay, just to finish, to let you go watch the games, one final favor I'm going to ask you. Because I always say I am the president of the Draymond Green fan club. Everybody says he is a dirty player. I always focus on defense and what he brings to the table. Please, please, let everybody know what Draymond means to this league and to the Golden State Warriors.
He's one of the most valuable players in the NBA that doesn't put up your traditional stats. He's not going to be in the running for MVP or any of these awards, but he's one of the main reasons the Warriors went on this incredible run. He defends 5 positions. He plays like a point guard on offense. Everyone's looking for a guy like this, you know, and I think that's why teams were intrigued by Zion, is because he has a little bit of that same defensive versatility and toughness and playmaking ability. So, yeah, Draymond Green is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I'm with you.
A little bit more serious. Being versatile is what the NBA teams are looking right now.
Exactly what they want. You know, they want guys who can guard multiple positions, who can play on the ball, who can play off the ball, and I think that's why, you know, the traditional big man has changed a little bit.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your time here in Porto. Remember to try francesinha. Did you try already?
Yes, amazing.
Yeah?
Yes.
You liked it?
I loved it.
Okay, and you're invited to come back anytime you want.
Thank you, my friend.